about our panel this evening. So you know all of them, you've seen them before, they need no introduction, but we're gonna introduce them. So first off, I am gonna introduce Glenda Jordan, who lives in Las Vegas and works full time as an artist, model, and entertainer. She grew up on a farm south of Nashville, Tennessee, where she was indoctrinated into the Southern Baptist faith from birth. After deconstructing religion in college, she became involved in activism for various causes. Joining the third wave intersectional feminist movement, whoop, Glenda believes that liberation from the patriarchy and the destructive influence of misogynistic faiths are inexorably linked. Focusing on atheistic feminism and sex positivity, Glenda is an active volunteer with RFR. She is also our senior troll stomper here at RfRx and other nonprofit organizations and her local queer communities. Other passions include fantasy and sci-fi, Star Trek, art history, traveling, and national parks. Yes. When she's not in her studio or doing marathon Zelda gaming sessions, Glenda enjoys spending time with her partners and friends. Yay, Glenda. Okay, and then Helen, do you want to introduce our next guest?
Yes, I can. Our next guest is Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben is a trailblazing resident physician on a mission to bridge the gap between the medical world and the public. Dr. Ben brings a unique perspective to the field as a trans man, weaving personal experiences and professional expertise to communicate current issues in medicine with authenticity and empathy. As a proud member of the LGBTQ plus community, Dr. Ben understands the importance of representation in healthcare. He's breaking down barriers and fostering understanding by sharing his journey as a trans man in the medical field. Dr. Ben is not just a doctor, he's a voice for inclusivity, diversity, and compassionate care. Dr. Ben is a regular contributor to the conversation on online programs such as the Transatlantic Call-In Show, Talk Heathen, and his own channel, Family Dr. Ben, where he addresses medicine, skepticism, and LGBTQ plus rights.
Awesome. Yay, Dr. Ben. We're glad to have you back. You're getting a lot of love in the chat as well. We love your episodes here. So thank you for joining us. Okay. And our third panelist is also returning guest, Jason Friedman, who grew up in the evangelical movement in Texas during the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s. Can relate. At 12, he was told he was a prophet of God, but was also under attack by demons. He was the subject of multiple exorcism attempts to no avail and was ultimately shunned by his church group and entire community, which led to spiraling into an intense depression. After going through numerous painful life experiences, Jason discovered the field of psychology and realized it was something he wanted to devote his life to. He is currently in school and pursuing a master's of science in psychology. Jason can also be found volunteering for the atheist community of Austin. We just did an episode of the nonprofits together recently, which will be airing soon, and appearing as a host of several of their shows. Welcome, Jason. Yay. And welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. You can unmute yourselves now that we have awkwardly introduced you over the last 5 minutes. Or presumably you can unmute yourselves.
Yeah. I'm unmuted.
Oh, there we go.
Yes, we
Yeah,
can hear. Yay! Look.
I just love how
now.
like there's a side chat now about me fighting Richard Dawkins, and I love
I love this. I am so
I think you
excited
can
for our
take him,
Q&A.
I know. Oh, he's feeble. He's a feeble old man. I got him. Let's go.
Amazing, amazing.
This is the queer content I'm here for.
That's right. For trans rights. I will tie him up with a trans flag. It'll be glorious.
I love it. Okay, so, that is probably a great transition to jump into a few terms and things. But before we do that, can I ask briefly, the three of you, are you doing anything fun to celebrate Pride this year, or have you already done anything fun?
I can start. I definitely June 1st, my polycule had a play party, so that was a lot of fun, and it was Greek hedonistic themed. So I made one of my spreads of grapes and cheese and crackers and all that kind of stuff, and it was a wonderful hedonistic, debaucherous, sensual evening of affirmation and play, and it was really fantastic. And so that's how I started out Pride Month, and then maybe next week we'll probably do, we're going to do a double screening outside at the pool. One of my partners has a pool of, we'll probably do double feature of The Birdcage and Tu Wong Fu for just some classic, like, gay movie content. They're great. You know, if you haven't seen those films, they're very significantly important for the time. And anyway, but so yes, that's what I've done so far. However, Vegas, to clarify, Vegas has our Pride, official Pride is in October, which I think is lame. I think it should be in June. Everybody else is in June. But yes, that is what I have done so far for Pride.
I love that. And you're right. That was not a very inclusive thing for me to assume that everyone was celebrating Pride this month, because we do, have a global audience, and Pride is not in June for everyone.
Right.
So thank you for pointing that out.
Oh,
But
I
we
did
can
also
celebrate year round.
I did also go to a queer, I went to a Pride, it's called Pride Style. It's wrestling, the like Shakespearean gladiatorial theatrical wrestling. And it was a whole like gay wrestling meet, which I attend about every month because it's kind of the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. The bloodlust it incites in me is like, it does. Anyway, if you've never seen theatrical wrestling, it is a time, and this is all like Pride themed, queer. It's great. Anyway, that's what I've done so far.
I love it.
I went to Pride yesterday in DC, Capitol Pride. I know somebody else in the audience was also at Capitol Pride. And it was an interesting day because I was super excited because Kiki Palmer and Ava Max were there performing live, and I was like, I'm absolutely gonna be there. So I was there. And I like left the alcohol area for a little bit because I really wanted like some cheesy fries. And so, I follow my heart to get me some cheesy fries. And then, of course, on a day when I'm like not at work, I have to do medical things anyway, and somebody like passes out in front of me, and I'm like, okay, all right, here we go. And like everybody else was panicking like super hardcore, and I stepped in to stop people from doing CPR on a conscious man. I was like, please do not do this. Like I was gonna let people do whatever they wanted, and I saw them start to go for compressions. I was like, please don't. And so for the record, like, please carry Narcan on you. It's great. They had way too much Narcan, and like the guy probably only needed one round of Narcan. They gave him multiples because they didn't wait between the time. And it's not gonna hurt him. It's not gonna hurt him if he didn't need it. But like the thing is, if you're gonna use your Narcan, like you need to wait. Like you give one and then you wait like 2 to 3 minutes before you give another one, because you want to get them breathing but not hating you. And like that's the ideal place. But people panic in emergency, and they're like, we just have to do everything. Time goes by very slowly, especially in an emergency. And so I'm just like trying to keep people from doing something stupid before like EMS showed up. So things happen. Like it's great to be there for people, but like don't do CPR on a conscious person, like please.
So
words to live by.
Yeah, so you weren't actually having to save the person. It was more that I have to make sure nobody does a fuck up.
I made sure nobody did something stupid. Like I showed up, I was like, hey, he's fine. Like I was ready to get involved, like if he needed it, but I was like, okay, he's breathing, he's got a pulse, like his eyes just opened, like he is responsive. Like people are like, he's unresponsive. Like he was for a second, but he is responsive. He is opening his eyes to voice. Like that is responsive. You do not need to give him 10 rounds of Narcan because he's not saying his name yet. Like calm down, you got this.
Right. Which I'm really, just to do a little PSA, if you aren't currently up to speed with your CPR qualifications, unless there is somebody immediately there who defer to the most trained, smartest person in the scene, please, for the love of everything. My partner is the same kind of, one of my partners is the same kind of training. Like if someone's like, oh, I'm a doctor, literally do whatever they want. Please don't try to intervene in that way. I'm glad you brought that story up, Dr. Ben. Jesus Christ.
So with that too, like be safe at your events. Like be free to use whatever substances you are wanting to use, but like be safe, have people with you, make sure you're in a safe area, and that you have precautions in place, because we want everyone to be alive afterwards.
Correct. Speaking of which, if you're going to be utilizing recreational substances, you can order test strips. I highly
Yeah.
encourage you to just go online and order some test strips for whatever things you might want to do to keep yourself a little safer. That's your little PSA. Second one.
Yep. But good advice. All right, Jason, you got anything to follow that up with?
Yeah, I'm here in Houston, and we have a real big pride parade, and our pride parade is I think it's June 28th, 29th, actually. So we'll be doing that. We have a big area downtown called the Montrose area, and that's a lot of the bars that we go to are out in there. So I'm sure we'll just meet up with a couple buddies, probably our buddy Greg and his husband or his boyfriend. He's going to be his husband at some point, but probably meet up with them and just go party, go hang out, So nothing too crazy. Probably do some stuff. There's a youth center in that area, so probably take the kiddo down there, maybe the weekend before the festivities ramp up and go do something. So yeah, it should be fun. But I mean, we're more or less living pride every day. So, it's cool. Houston has a lot of activities. We have one of the biggest pride parades in the world out here. So there's no lack of queerness going on downtown Houston 24 hours a day. So that's cool. I like living here.
I love that. And I have found that to be the case in some of the places where you might initially feel like you're the least likely to be able to find like a strong and thriving queer community. Those places have the best pride celebrations
Oh
you've ever
yeah.
been to. Like Texas.
Well,
I lived in Lexington for a little while. It was the same way. Like,
yeah.
yes.
Here in Houston, I mean, the street that we used to live on before we bought the house that my partner and I just bought, there's literal rainbows painted on the streets in downtown Houston. I mean, it's very open. I mean, literally the central part of Houston, this area called the Montrose area, right on Montrose and Westheimer, dead center, is one of the queerest areas in the United States, and it's in the middle of Texas. So it's cool the way Houston's set up, that it's just kind of always conducive for that. I don't know. I like it a lot. It's nice.
I love that. All right. Well, on that note, let's quickly jump into a quick review of terminology. I know for a lot of people, this is old hat, and for some people, this is new hat, because that
So get
is a
your new
term
hats
that
on,
we
everybody.
use. So get your new thinking
Get
hats
your
on.
get your queer hat on. All right, it's time for the
Yes.
education.
And we'll do a couple of real quick definitions of terms, and don't feel bad if you're like, I don't know what these terms mean, I don't know what these flags are. Like, this is an educational event. Feel free to ask questions, and if you want to ask a question but you don't want it to like show up in the chat that you ask a question that maybe you feel like is silly or you're embarrassed about, send it as a direct message to me or Helen, and we'll add it to the list of questions to ask. So like, no shame here. Like, everybody had a different amount of like sex education and all that, depending on how they grew up. Some people like myself had exactly none. Some people had a lot. So like, don't feel bad if you have a question and you're not sure. If other people already know or not, there's no stupid questions, unless you're a troll, in which case you will be removed by Glenda. So, okay. Real quickly then, I'll share my screen and just go over like a couple of terms. I made y'all a little PowerPoint presentation. It is very brief. Can y'all see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So terms and stuff, because knowing is half the battle. So some people may be wondering about the difference between things like sexuality versus gender identity versus gender expression versus sexual orientation, like all that. I love the gender unicorn. This is a great tool for kind of explaining all of these terms, and they are briefly defined here. I titled this slide with the term queer. As I mentioned earlier, we are using that as a reclaimed term, meaning it used to be considered a slur for people who were members of the LGBTQ plus community. In recent years, it has been reclaimed, which means people who it was applied to have started using it in a way that is affirming and saying, no, we are going to use this term and we're going to use it to celebrate, and this is not going to make me feel bad. And here we are using it. So we're using the term queer, but we do recognize that for some people it may still feel like a slur. We are not using in that way. And if you are out in the world using terms, be aware of that. If you are not a member of the queer community, there is a possibility that it could sound like a slur if you use it. So just bear that in mind. But we are using it here today as a reclaimed and positive term. Okay, so this is the gender unicorn. This is a tool that is used to kind of just help describe and understand what we mean by all of these terms, and they are defined here. This came from the PFLAG website. You can find it if you type into Google or whatever search engine you use, gender unicorn. You can find this. It's an open source, like free to use and share graphic that explains all of these terms. And so the first one is gender identity. This just refers to who you think or feel like you are inside, and it is described up here at the top of the slide. And here the little unicorn is thinking about it in their head. And it might refer to female, woman, girl, or male, man, or boy, or other genders. And you might identify to some degree with one or more of those. And so that is your gender identity. You don't have to just pick one. Some people are gender fluid. It doesn't have to be the one that matches the sex you were assigned at birth, and so on. Each of these categories of things are separate and distinct. It is not the case that if you have one gender identity, then your gender expression will also match that, and your sex assigned at birth will also match that. That is not the case, especially for queer folks. Your gender expression refers to how you demonstrate who you are. And that is represented here in this part of the graph. And it might refer to how our unicorn here goes out and dresses or does their pretty unicorn mane or anything like that. Next, we have biological sex. That is defined here as your equipment under the hood. That might include organs that you have, hormones, chromosomes, any combination of those things. And usually refers to the sex you were assigned at birth, which could be female, male, or something else. Then we have sexual orientation, which refers to who you are attracted to. And you could be physically attracted or emotionally or romantically attracted. Those don't necessarily have to align, and you don't necessarily have to have those at all. Some people are asexual or aromantic and do not feel that way, and that's okay too, or feel that way very rarely. So those are the kind of different sorts of terms that we use, and that's the gender unicorn. And let's go on to the flags. Does anybody get confused by what all the flags mean at all the parades? Because I do sometimes. So
I need I'm queer and I need a chart.
exactly, I do too. I was making this chart today to represent the flags that go with the categories that each of y'all told me about in our pre-planning for the meeting, and I learned about new flags that I didn't know about previously. So it's okay if you don't know. These are a couple of links that you can go to where they are kind of guides that explain the flags. So I'll drop those in the chat and you can feel free to check those out. These are the flags that we figured out refer to us. And if you recognize them, like, kudos to you. And we can go over them in turn if we want to. Glenda, do you want to describe yours?
Sure. The first one, sorry, I just had a little pop up. So can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, my computer decided to be sassy with me. The first one is pansexual. It's actually, you can see a little pansexual flag on my door over there. Pansexual, in my personal opinion, for me, it's a kind of interchangeable with bisexual. What pansexual means for me is that I am attracted to a spectrum of sexuality and genders. To me, I'm attracted to the person and not necessarily their gender. I'm attracted to anyone on that spectrum. So somebody who's really masculine or really feminine or really androgynous, doesn't really matter to me. I also have like sexual experiences with a spectrum of people on that. And I like the colors of pansexual flag. So it's just what I feel is the best term for me. And then the second flag is polyamorous, which means that I have multiple romantic relationships and emotional relationships and sexual relationships with multiple people. And then the third one, which full disclosure, was a little bit of a new flag for me. I actually didn't know this flag, is the BDSM, I just say that I'm kinky or that I'm in the kink community, and we will get into later on why this is important and why this is tied into queerness and sexual identity. But it just means that if you don't know what kink is or what BDSM is, it's just a structure for sexuality and an exploration of sexuality that some people engage in. It could be monogamous and private in their own life, or it could be with other people. And that's an entire separate discussion, but I will touch on later when we talk about like exploring our queerness on why that was specifically important for me to discover that I was not a straight person. So those are those 3 flags for me.
Some great points, and thank you for that explanation. Ben, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'll hop in. So of course we have the number 1 flag for me, which is trans. That's not too hard to explain. I was assigned female at birth. I do not identify with that. I'm very clearly a man. I knew that. It took me a while to kind of figure that out for myself about what made me a man and what versus non-binary versus anything else. And I'm actually about to hit my second T day, I think on July 12th will be my second year on T, which is amazing.
Yay.
Yeah, super, super exciting. My second flag is bi, and then also poly. And I guess like, okay, as I had like resisted the final flag because I'm not in the BDSM community, but if we're including kink in that, then you know I could adopt that one as well. My kink is a very like I guess not BDSM style of kink, but I'm all in favor. Love that shit. But I did want to bring up and Jason will probably chime in as well as far as bi versus pan, and this can be a very nuanced discussion, and I think everybody has their own definition of what these terms mean for them, and one person's definition is not the end all be all. Everybody has their own significance and meaning behind why they choose the certain terms that they do. And I mean, I always say that the terms that you use are just to help communicate yourself to other people. And so really there's a lot of wiggle room between all of these. For me personally, I chose bi versus pan because um, contrary to popular belief, bi does not mean that you are restricted to 2 genders. That seems to be what the name implies a little bit. But often I hear that bi refers to more than one gender. And for me, why I picked this in contrast to pan, like Glenda was saying, that Glenda prefers to like has sexuality based on the person and not the gender. Whereas I'm not as able to separate these 2 things. But my sexual and emotional attraction are different based on more their expression, for me, but also certain anatomical features I have different attraction to. Like I'm very, very physically attracted to feminine presenting people as well as feminine anatomy, and whereas with masculine presenting people and masculine anatomy, like I can be attracted to them, but it takes a certain type of person. I'm a lot more needing to know the person before I'm attracted to them, whereas with feminine presenting people, I can instantly be attracted. And so because I have distinct differences in those attractions, is why I say that I'm bi versus pan. And I'm sure Jason might have different thoughts about why he chose this label as opposed to another.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that explanation. And Jason, yeah, go ahead with yours.
Yeah, so I mean, more or less, I'm gonna echo what Ben said. Being a cis guy, you know, I don't have the first one, but I'm a bi dude, I'm poly, but I definitely do more identify with BDSM than I do with kink, how Glenda and Ben were talking about. And for me, I'm a big nerd, so like for me, bisexual doesn't even mean anything involving gender for me. I'm a lot like Glenda, to where like gender I don't care if you're cis, trans, I don't care, male, female, non-binary. None of that means anything to me. To me, bisexual is more of a nerd way. It has to deal with sexuality, sexual organs, accessory sexual organs. I look at it like a textbook. You generally have, I'm not even thinking chromosomes. You generally have, humans tend to have a gradient scale of one type of sex organs versus another type with some intersex and some stuff in between. But to me, that's kind of meeting in the middle. And in my mind, I'm just saying how my mind works. So in my nerd mind, thinking everything like a textbook, it's like, okay, there's these parts and there are these parts, and there's kind of a gradient in between that's, I don't know. So I don't really take gender into account, if that makes sense. And to me, if a person presents as more mask but has a vagina, like that's just whatever to me, right? I don't know. I'm have to go along with Ben and say it's like for every human, for me, it's more the person. Like it's really, I don't have a type or preference. My partner jokes and says that I find something hot about everybody, which is pretty true, So I don't really care, And then as far as poly, yeah, definitely poly kind of goes without saying. And I think it'd be interesting because I'm a poly person who's dating who's more or less married to a monogamous person, and we have house and family together, so that's interesting. And then as far as BDSM, I am into things like dom sub, tying up, role reversal, things like that, pushing stuff to the extremes, things like that. We have safe words in the bedroom and things like that. So, and then we can kind of carry that out. So it's definitely less kink and probably much more of a BDSM relationship in the bedroom. But yeah, that's kind of me right there in a nutshell.
Awesome, thanks. And Helen and I, even though we're hosting, we also have some flags here to discuss. Helen, do you want to tell us a little bit about yours? You have a different flag than Glenda
I
and Ben
do.
and
So
Jason.
I do. So this is the polysexual flag, which means that it kind of overlaps with bi. I have like my bisexual Illuminati shirt on. I wear a lot of bi jewelry, but this more identifies of how I describe myself, which means that you're attracted to some genders, but not all genders. And it's like gender isn't really a factor a lot of time in the person I'm attracted to, but it tends to depend more on, like, I am demisexual. I have to get to know someone pretty well before I engage in a sexual relationship with them. I've had to feel like I have some kind of connection. And it takes me a little bit to warm up, and that also doesn't really have to do with gender. It has more to do how I connect with someone. But this, because being bi was a default in the 90s when I came out. And then as I've gotten older, it's become more nuanced. So this kind of represents me a little bit more in the way that I would describe myself. And then, like, obviously, like, I'm poly. My husband and I are both polyamorous, though we are our lives are very chaotic right now, so we're only in a relationship with each other. But every so often, like, we like to have relationships with other people, though we like to call it strong friends with benefits. I'm where Glenda has multiple partners in very long-term romantic relationships. Ours tend to veer more towards the having intimate friendships. So that's kind of, and like, I'm a very, like, I only can handle so many people living in my house and staying here for so long. And I'm just like, okay, I want to hang out, have a good time, and then you go home. And I'll see you in a couple weekends. That's how we roll. And I do have the BDSM flag, though. This has shifted in more because a lot of things can be kink, but since there's no kink flag, here we are. So those be my flags, y'all.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, I love how everybody has a slightly different take, even on the same flags, which I'm really glad we did this exercise to kind of illustrate how even amongst the queer community, like, there is no single definition of what each of these terms mean or have to mean. It is individual. Your experience is valid. It's fine. We do our best to try and identify things with all of these different terms and labels, but they're not perfect, so it's okay.
Yeah, and this is something for people who are out there discovering who they are. Like, you do not have to adhere to somebody else's definition of the flag or the label that you want to use. Like, it doesn't like we're all telling you, our experiences are all very, very different.
Yep.
And don't let somebody else regulate who you are as a person. If you find a term that you say, I resonate with this, like I identify with this, like I feel happy using this term, then by all means use it. Like, don't let somebody else determine whether or not you're allowed to use a certain term or not. Like, that's for you to decide.
Yeah, dude,
Ben,
I
I'm so
agree.
glad you brought that up. There is I'll define the word for those who don't know. There's a term called gatekeeping. Um, and gatekeeping exists in every community, whatever interest there is. I promise there are gatekeepers in that interest. And it basically, like, for example, like, there was in the chat, I mentioned that I hadn't seen the original series, and someone's like, oh wow, you've never seen the original series of Star Trek, because I've seen Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, all those things. A gatekeeper would be somebody who says, you don't actually like Star Trek because you've never seen the original series, therefore you are not a Star Trek fan. Same thing for, I'm not to segue into this very important point, when it comes to labels and discovering queerness, gatekeeping is very important to learn about, because you can be a queer person without having ever had a romantic or sexual relationship with somebody of the person that you're attracted to. I to gatekeeping bisexuality. If you are somebody who you were assigned female at birth, you're a woman, you identify as a woman, whatever, and you've never had a sexual experience with a woman, but you know that you're attracted to women, just because you've never had that experience doesn't mean that you're any less queer or any less bisexual or any less attracted to women. And for someone to say, like, oh, well, you've actually never had sex with a woman, therefore you're not actually bisexual. That's called gatekeeping. We don't do that here. So yes, gatekeeping when it comes to labels. The whole point of this exercise or this explanation is that whatever you feel most comfortable with, go and take that. If you're one of those people that doesn't like labels, like, that's fine. That's fine. We're not telling you have to do that. It's whatever you feel lets you navigate the world easier and with more comfortability is what we generally tend to support. That's why
Yeah,
I've chosen my labels. That's why
And
we've all chosen our labels.
and
this
like, if you, oh, go ahead, Ben.
No, but along the same lines, like, I guess I mentioned I'm trans. I'm about to hit my second T-day here, but like, that's not to say that you have to do those things to be trans. Like,
Yep.
and that's something that's
Absolutely.
perpetuated a lot is there's a whole trans medicalist community that I would say are wrong, because they assert that you have to undergo medical transition to be trans, and that's not true at all. Like, if you are a person, let's say you're assigned female at birth and you are a man, whether or not you ever do hormones does not change the fact that you're trans or not. Like,
Totally. That's
even
also
if you say,
classist and
even if,
ableist. Like,
yeah, and even if you say, like, I am a man and I never want to do hormone therapy, you're still trans, because like there's so many reasons why someone would not want to transition, and some of them are financial, some of them are location, some of them are risks with taking a medication that you're not comfortable taking. And there are risks with anything, and if you say, yeah, I want to live my life as a man, I want to socially exist as a man, but I don't want to do any medical therapy, you're still trans. Like, you still get to fly that flag and wear that label. And nobody can take that away from you. So, like, I know there's some things that are very contentious here, especially in the community. And if someone tells you you're not trans because you're not on hormones, that's bullshit. And the community as a whole will stand against those people, because that's more of a fringe ideology that we largely don't accept.
Yes, correct. Also, same goes for non-binary, which is a subset of trans, although some people will have a contentious argument about that too. But you do not have to be on any kind of medication. You might be, you might not be. You don't have to express yourself in any particular way to be non-binary either. I am often um, passing as a woman. I am not a woman. I am non-binary. People often mistake me for a woman. It kind of weird. Usually the only times that someone says, dude, you look like a man is when I'm like trying to go out and look femme and it's not working because it just doesn't quite hit right.
I am for all the time I've known you, like for if you ever try to go femme, it's going to be weird. I love you, and I would be like, okay, I'm like, you know, this is how they're expressing themselves. I love them anyway, but my brain would be like, oh, what, okay.
It is weird. It's a weird look. And like people will call
There's
me.
no rules. There's no rules, everybody.
There's no rules. But yeah, that is usually the time when people are like, oh, something's different here.
And when I, especially the point of no rules, I was assigned female at birth, you know, I have a vagina and a uterus, and I, you know, assigned woman and identify as being as a woman. I found that I have felt my most feminine when I chopped off all my hair, which is not traditionally feminine, but that's what feels most feminine for me. I genuinely, literally feel like when I look in the mirror, I feel like I look more masculine when I have long hair. And I don't like the way that makes me feel. So I prefer to have my short hair because that makes me feel more feminine and appealing. I'm also almost 6 feet tall. So I'm sure to some people, I probably look pretty masculine. Like I'm especially in my heels, I'm well over 6 feet and I have short hair. But to me, this is what makes me feel more feminine. So there are no rules. You get to decorate your gender however you want, whatever makes you the most comfortable to add these elements to your gender soup. There are no rules. You get to do whatever the fuck you want.
Yes, amen. Ramen to that. And with that, I will stop sharing the gender unicorn and we can carry on with our discussion. One final disclaimer I wanted to do before we go on is that although we have just all described all the different ways that we are queer and that our gender identity and expression and our sexuality and our relationship styles and kink and everything like that is different, we do not represent the full spectrum of queer people. We are, for example, a panel of white people, which is different than the experience that queer people of color might have, people with disabilities. Like there's all sorts of different ways that people can be in the world, and we certainly don't speak for everybody in the community. These are just our experiences, and other experiences are also valid, and we would love to hear about them in the chat or in the comments. So, okay, with that, let's talk about coming out. This is a term that people a lot of times will use to refer to when you let people know publicly that you are queer. Is also a term that we use a lot in the secular community to sometimes refer to people who become non-religious and let people know that way. There's a lot of crossover between these. In fact, one of the most common topics that people call into our helpline about after fear of hell is to do with sexuality. And some recent surveys have found that as many as 50% of people who are leaving religion are doing so because of LGBTQ plus issues and negative teachings at their church. So I am wondering if y'all would like to discuss how being a queer person impacted your experience of religion when you were younger, and did coming out coincide in any way for you for both of those things? And maybe we should go just kind of in order. Jason, do you want to start?
Yeah, sexuality was huge for me. But it's something I definitely pushed down for a long time. But it's funny because even as like a young kid, I was always drawn towards the obviously queer people at the church. And then we even had a youth pastor, trigger warnings. We even had a youth pastor there who was targeting some of us. So that was a weird experience too, kind of get caught up in that whole statistic of, clergymen targeting queer youth. So, I got to experience that. And then it was interesting finally coming out of the closet. Helen, who's here, was actually a big supporter during that time in my life. And if anybody's bored and wants to go look at some old ACA content on secular sexuality, it was on there. And probably made a fool of myself, but definitely that was my kind of public coming out, kind of, pushed by Helen and some other people over the ACA. So that was good to chronicle that. But a lot of the shame and a lot of oh, I'm probably thinking those thoughts because I had a couple beers. Oh, I'm probably thinking those thoughts about my buddy because we're just like smoking weed and we're alone together. And that's probably because I'm high or whatever. I had to finally kind of come to grips with those things. And the I have no reason to feel shame for those things. It's boring and normal, right? Like whatever. So I want to bang a dude. It's really not that exciting. And like I had to finally admit to myself, the only reason I feel ashamed for that is because here I am 20 plus years after deconversion and becoming an atheist, still still being controlled by the shit that I was indoctrinated by so long ago. So I think religion had, if anything, the biggest impact on how I expressed as a queer person, how I navigated, how I masked a lot of things, and am currently kind of deconstructing some behaviors and ways of thinking and ways of navigating this world that I used as a way to hide what I thought was my screaming queerness that I thought everybody else saw. And it's funny because a lot of people did. So it's just interesting how those things work out. But that's kind of my experience right there. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That I mean, and we'll talk a little bit more later
Mhm.
too about, kind of harmful ideas about masculinity. And, we talk all the time about the ways that people who are assigned female at birth, tend to be marginalized and misogyny and everything like that. But I know you've kind of touched on and you've gone into in other cases more the ways that this sort of heteronormative masculinity can be
Mhm.
really, really damaging to people just living their authentic
Well,
lives.
yeah, dude, especially, and I know you're going to move on to somebody else, but especially like bi exclusion and like male bi exclusion and then like
Mhm.
male bi poly exclusion. Like we were talking
Mhm.
about this before, is a huge thing. We had that reality show, The Couple to Thruple, and I was ranting about it with my partner, and I'm like, there are literally no male female couples. Or thruple, sorry, that's funny. There's literally none. It's always this like stereotypical two girls and a dude, or three dudes, and it's
And
like,
Jason, just to explain what you're talking about, there's a
yeah,
reality show. It's a new reality show that's, think of The Bachelor, whatever
uh-huh,
dating reality show that's about an established couple, a male and female established couple to thruple. So they're looking for a third
yeah.
to add into their
Is it a
couple.
female? Is it a female?
Is it only a female, Helen? Is it only an
Oh,
AFAB
Of
female?
course.
of course, because we're commodities and
We
not
are
yeah,
accessories.
yeah,
It's
and
so
also
wild.
this, like, I know we're going to go into this a little bit more, but this speaks to what queerness is that we all have different we have our genders that we identify as, and sexuality can change and it's on a spectrum. It is not a fixed state. And what happens is that when you're living in a cis normative society, it teaches that it has to be fixed. Sexuality is fixed, gender is fixed. Even if you're a part, like, if you're gay or bi or whatever, that's what you are. You can't move outside the binaries. And then we're talking about gender roles.
Mhm.
You have a role, this person has a role. And when going back to what Glenda said about gatekeeping, you will find a lot of people in society want to tell other people what their sexuality and gender are, when really you don't know somebody else's mind. So keep your fucking mouth shut.
Mhm. I
Let
agree.
people exist. Anyway, Ben, do you want to talk about your experience?
It got very heated recently. It's very interesting as my perspective in the whole gender roles thing because I've lived both sides of the coin, to an extent. And when I say that, like a lot of people that hear that I'm trans assume that I've that I've lived as a cis man, or like that I've lived with certain privileges of a cis man. And of course, right now is when my cat decides to come up to the screen. So if my cat knocks something over, I apologize. So I essentially, as a trans person, am living in a society set up for cis men, was raised to be a cis woman in a society that does not treat me as I should be. This cat needs to leave. Okay, come on. You can stay over there.
Pets are
But yeah,
always
I was
welcome on
raised to be
RfRx.
a cis woman. And then transitioned, and now I have to compete in a world built for cis men as someone that was raised to be a woman, which is very, very interesting because you think that upbringing doesn't have a lot to do with it unless you've ever studied sociology and psychology, and you do know that upbringing has a lot to do with it. And so where I've been told my voice doesn't matter, that's how I engage with discussion, is that my voice doesn't matter. And I've had to relearn that my voice does matter. And engaging as a man, when you believe your voice doesn't matter, is very different how many cis men engage with discussion. So as much as I'd love to say I have full like cis male privilege as a trans man, I do not. I probably am more similar, in fact, to a lot of cis women in the regard that most people don't see me as a man. Like a lot of people who know me as a trans man, they view me the same that they view a woman, maybe even lower, because they view me as a woman who decided to go against women and participate in the patriarchy. And that is something that I've been told multiple times. Like, you only transitioned because you want to oppress women. You only transitioned because you didn't like your place in society. And so this is what I'm told. And trans women, on the other hand, are often told like they should never ever want to be in the role of a woman because that's degrading their societal status. Like, why would you ever want to be lower in the social hierarchy? And the fact that there is such a strict social hierarchy is hilarious, because the fact that trans people exist so strongly in a society with such strong gender hierarchies shows us even more that trans people exist and trans people are valid. Because if you were somebody and the only factor was your societal status, you would not see trans women. Like, you would not see people like willingly go into spaces knowing that they will probably be violently assaulted for being themselves. Like, there is no benefit to trans women being in women's spaces, like, as other than they get to be where they are supposed to be. There's no societal benefit. There's no change in their social hierarchy as a positive. And with trans men, there's no increase in your social hierarchy by being in men's spaces. Like, we're at a disadvantage and at a deficit compared to what society expects us to be at. And we do it. And so all of that, like, it's not okay. It's absolutely fucking not okay that trans people are subjected to things like this. But it is empowering to know that there are other trans people who are willing to do these things to push everything forward. But on the same sense as that, like, acknowledge that, yeah, we're at a place right now in trans rights that are better than they have ever been in the US. But in order to push this forward, somebody has to be on the chopping block to make those rights go forward. And unfortunately, everybody who is openly trans, everyone who is openly non-binary, anyone who's openly opposing gender stereotypes and opposing gender norms, those people are on that chopping block. And whether we like it or not, we're there. And so know that, like, anytime somebody is openly putting themselves in that space, they are saying it is okay. Like, I would rather face this myself than let somebody else do it for me. And I would rather face this myself than let the next generation face the same things that I did. And so every single act, and I know I'm going off on a thing here, but every single act of opposition to the gender hierarchy is radical. Every single act is radical, and every single act is worthy of appreciation. And that's anybody, like any of you here, like whether it's a tiny thing of saying like, I'm going to walk into the bathroom with my trans friend so that they're not assaulted. I'm going to openly say I'm they, them in a group of people that you don't know anybody else. Whether that's, I'm going to say, hey, don't make that joke about women because that's not okay. Every time you do that, you're putting yourselves in that place so that somebody else doesn't have to. And so it doesn't matter how small that thing is. All of it matters. And I know I just went on a thing, but I felt empowered to do so because I think people here need to hear that.
No, you are empowered to do so, and that's what we brought you here for. We wanted to hear from you. So
This is
thank
the
you.
queer agenda, everybody, by the way. This is the
Yes.
agenda. Equality.
This is it.
That's the agenda.
Yes.
Big
I
shocker,
kept-
I know. I will
know.
send out pamphlets later.
Yes.
Just
I always
kidding.
wondered, I was like, what is this queer agenda? Like, nobody sent it to me. I don't know what it is. We're
I keep
making it
waiting
here.
for my free toaster oven as a member of the queer community, and I have not received it yet.
Right. But the agenda is don't be a jerk to people.
Yeah,
That's it.
don't be a dick. Equal rights and let people live their lives. I know, shocking. I know.
Right. Right. I love it. Okay, Glenda, would you like me to repeat the question? It's been a minute, or do you want to share your coming out and or coming out story?
Coming out story, and I guess how I knew I was queer, because that's kind of part and parcel to it, if one happens right
Yes.
after the other. Again, so I was raised evangelical, dominionist, fundamentalist, Southern Baptist Christian. I know that's a mouthful. TLDR, women are subservient, gay people bad. Like that was and purity culture. Oh my goodness, purity culture. My wine fairy is here. Thank you so much. So I when did I know I was attracted to women, and then what was my experience coming out? So I was, I grew up on a farm in Tennessee, and I had a lot of queer women can relate to having extremely intense friendships throughout, like female friendships throughout school. I'm also like on the spectrum, like I'm neurodivergent. I haven't been officially diagnosed, but I have had a professional casually diagnose me as autistic and on the spectrum. And it's a very common thing among queer autistic women to have extremely intense friendships with latent homosexual feelings towards women. I knew I work as an artist, and a lot of my artwork, pretty much all of my artwork was drawing women, and it still is to this day. I was capturing women. I was drawing like sexualized versions of women, and it's like because they're pretty, and like not really taking it a little past that of like, because you also like, and sorry if I'm rambling and I'm a little all over the place. There's this sensation growing up as a woman who's attracted to women of, do I want to be her, or do I want to have sex with her? Like, there's genuinely an overlap of I'm consuming these images of women, and I can't tell if I want to be her or I want to be with her, and it's somehow both at the same time, and I don't really know how to separate those feelings. Anyway, I went to college, and I left my religion around the same time. And I had what, again, a lot of other queer women experience, which is very performative sexuality, which is, if you think of the Girls Gone Wild era of raunch culture in the late 90s, early 2000s like I Kissed a Girl and I Like It by Katy Perry, which is a very viral song. If you think of the way that women on women, the way that sapphic, which sapphic means women on women, sexuality was represented, it was very commodified, very fetishized. And it was like a thing of, especially if you're in college, you're having fun, like as a girl, to get male attention, to get this approval that you've been indoctrinated from infancy to achieve, a way to do that is you like, oh, look how fun and sexy I am. I'm gonna make out with women at a party. It's so fun and lighthearted, which as a woman, we're afforded that privilege to do so. Bisexual men are not afforded that privilege. You can't make out with each other. You can't safely explore sexuality with each other. But women, because it's a performative thing for the male gaze, which is the male gaze is I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to Wikipedia that. It's a very long thing. It's about the way men view women in a very broad sense and consume female sexuality in a broad sense. So I had a lot of that in college, like, oh yeah, I'll just like make out with this girl at a party and whatever, and liking it. And then after I graduated college and I moved to Las Vegas, which is where I live now, and I work full time again as an entertainer and a dancer in the dressing room. It's a very female dominated space, as it were, because pretty much if you're a dancer in Vegas, there are some male dancers, but it's almost all women. It's all women. So it's a very female dominated space. There's a lot of queer women, which having the discussion about I've never felt threatened by a queer woman in a dressing room experience is an entirely separate discussion. I'd love to talk about that anyway. And it wasn't, and this is why kink is important to me. And I'm very sorry if this is all over the place, but this is why kink is important to me. I had been living in Vegas for about a year and a half. I had ended an abusive relationship, managed to survive an abusive relationship. And then I met my one of my partners who is he's a queer man and he's very much in the kink community. And at a party, I don't think he's here tonight, but he's in the Zoom. At one of his birthday parties was a play party. And to describe real quick what this is, for the kink community and the queer community, a play party means there's a space where there's a group of people and sexual activity can happen between multiple people. Whatever that is whatever, how you determine that looks like for you, or whatever pre-established boundaries or rules, whatever it is. So this is a play party, and that was when I had sex with a woman for the first time. And then like later I was thinking about like, oh, like, yeah, that was really fun and I really liked it. And literally having to go like, oh, I'm actually not straight. Like I enjoyed that. I liked it. I knew I've been attracted to women for a while, but because of gatekeeping, which we brought up earlier, I felt like, well, because I haven't actually had sex with a woman, I can't say that I'm attracted to women, right? Like I don't know what I'm talking about. I just know that I like them and I like the way they look. And it wasn't literally until I had sex with a woman that I learned like, oh, yes, indeed, I do very much like women. And just because I haven't had, I'm polyamorous, I have multiple partners. I have not lived with a woman. I haven't cohabitated with a woman. I haven't had like a long-term emotional relationship with a woman, doesn't make me any less queer. I'm very much interested in women, invested in women. And as far as my experience of coming out, my privilege is I'm in a major metropolitan area. I was in my late 20s, I think, when I made my first like, hey, I'm not straight posts, which got a lot of, got good traction. But I had been out, I left the faith at like 19. I didn't have, thankfully, I mean, my privilege, I didn't have any backlash for coming out as queer. I had just affirmations. I didn't have any little private messages of, by the way, you're going to go to hell because you like women. I didn't have any of that. But it genuinely, it wasn't until late 20s that I did, officially like come out as queer. And it literally, I do laugh because there's something deeply hilarious to me about how I didn't know I liked women until I had sex with a few of them. And then I learned like, oh, okay.
I love it. That was a great kind of description of your journey. And I love that you brought into it that answer to that question of like, how did you know, or when did you know that you were queer? Because some people may be questioning that right now and they're like, oh, well, I don't know. How would I know? How do I know?
Right. And it is, I just want to clarify, this experience is, I mean, I want to say it's quite literally night and day for men and women. And that's not even to start on non-binary, just because the consequences for coming out as queer as a man or being interested in other men as a man is so different
I agree.
than being a woman, being interested in women, because the women versus women dynamic is the most fetishized and commodified. And what I mean by that, as far as like sexuality, all like so much of porn is made of us for the consumption of men, and there, when I say the consequences are high, like I'm likely, not always, if I'm holding hands with a woman on the street, like I might get some stares or whatever, but it's there's I will feel generally safe in my area. I'm in Las Vegas, whatever. I'm gonna feel generally safe. That is not the experience for two men together. It's not. You can't divide the intersection of patriarchal rules for like sexual masculinity with each other versus feminine sexuality with each other. And it's why when I talk about my experience of coming out as interested in all sexualities, it just isn't the same if you were a man interested in other women versus woman interested with other women, because the consequences, the risks, the judgments, there's just so much to talk about it. But to TLDR it, too long didn't read.
Hey, Glenda, are we going to do a talk in the future about the issues of feminines, sexuality, and religion at some point? Yes, we will.
We literally, we will, and we have to, because it's
Yep.
commodification, and it's the most, like, I am simultaneously like the most accepted for my very specific version of sexuality, and yet the most dehumanized, is not the most dehumanized. I mean, there's the violence, but like bisexual and pansexual women are truly seen as accessories to sexuality, which is an entirely different thing about unicorn hunting. But yes, I'm sorry, Jason, you were saying something. I know I'm rambling. I'm taking up way too much time. Sorry.
No,
No,
these are good
That's fine.
topics.
I was agreeing
Go
with
ahead.
No,
you.
I'm just,
Yeah.
I was just reminding that I'm putting the bee back in your bonnet, that we have to plan that talk so we can have a whole hour to talk about the fucked upness of existing as a cis woman and being queer and all the issues that come with it, living in a patriarchal society.
I mean, like the song, I mean, literally think just for a second, a thought exercise. Think about the song that came out, and what was it? I mean, when did I Kissed a Girl when did I Kissed a Girl come out?
It's like 2000.
It's like early 2000s.
8 or 9.
Yeah, it was like,
I was
it
in
was
college.
right before the teens.
I was in college, and I started college.
I will do a Google.
And for those who don't know, it's a very viral, it's a very famous pop song by Katy Perry called I Kissed a Girl and I Liked It. And it has lyrics like, you know, it's very queer baiting, which is another, like, queer to bait a queer. That's another discussion entirely. Oh my God, we've done this so many times. But it's about I kissed a girl and I liked it. You know, it felt so wrong. It felt so right. I hope my boyfriend doesn't mind it. It's all these concepts of like exploring, like, oh, I kissed a girl. That song, imagine if it was a male singer saying, I kissed a boy and I liked it. I kissed a guy and I liked it. Do you think they would have played that on the radio?
No, it would have been a very different reaction. It would not have been regarded as, oh, this is
2008.
intensely sexy.
Yeah, you think they would have played that at any local bar, club, whatever, and people would have been dancing to it? Absolutely the fuck not.
Well, you can also see that they're using the infantilizing term girl.
Yes.
And if a guy,
if
I in my kind of deep masculine voice was singing a country song about I kissed a boy, for one, I'd be called a groomer.
Yes.
Two, I would, yeah. So yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. This is why it took me until I was 40.
Oh,
You know,
100%.
especially working oil and gas, and especially living in Texas. And it's funny, even being part of the punk rock scene down here in Houston, it's still like extremely like closed off and still very homophobic, and it's just such a strange experience.
Jason, I
know?
can't believe you. I mean, like, yes, I've thought about it, I knew about it, but yeah, an adult woman saying, like, I kissed a girl and I liked it. Like, yeah, an adult, and you just assume another woman. An adult man singing, I kissed a boy, like you assume a man and a child.
Oh yeah, I've been called a groomer for being a bi dude.
Right,
I've been called a groomer and told, I mean, like literally by people who are in my immediate social circle. And it's terrifying coming out. It's terrifying having this talk right now. There's a reason I use my full name and my real name on the ACA and on the Discord. It's because because fuck you. That's why. You know what I mean? Well, also like my daughter came out in 5th grade and dealt with like social isolation and people trying to jump her. And so if she can come out and my friend Natalie can grow her own boobs, then who the fuck am I? Right. I'm a 6 foot, 220 pound cage fighter. I mean,
Do
I'm
something
probably,
about it.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Fucking do something about it. So I think also there's not enough representation of just like dudes, right? Right. There's, you think of queer guy, you think of the stereotype of like effeminate or artsy or, kind of, whatever. But there's like, there needs to be more dudes just like me that just like to get hit in the face and listen to death metal, but also like to watch gay porn. So, I mean, it's one of those things. I think but men's sexuality is already treated as unsafe, and I'm sure it's, and and I've heard, and Ben brought something up that I kind of wanted to hit upon. I've heard like black trans men talk about the hard shift in the way they're treated
Oh
in
yeah.
society.
Mhm.
And this is something that really stuck out to me when I heard somebody talking about it, because they said it used to be when I presented as a woman, people treated me like I was made out of pure gold. People open the door for me, treat me like my words meant something. And because you have that kind of fetishized black woman, thing here. And it's like you were talking about, Glenda. But then they were saying as soon as I started presenting as who I really am, people started pulling their kids away from me. People started following me in stores. People started accusing me of things. People started treating me different. And I think it's men are already pretty unsafe as it is, but it really fucks over the safe ones and the ones who are like actually like have good sexuality and have education. And so it's hard being a bi male.
Mhm.
And because I think one thing I was wanting to bring up is you have this imposter syndrome thing that you fight with. I'm like, I'm not, like stereotypically queer, I wear all black and drive a truck. And, I don't know. I don't have effeminate mannerisms, and I don't know. I say bro and call everybody dude and, whatever, so I feel really like in queer spaces, I feel out. In predominantly straight faces, I'm just like, I don't really fit here. So there's like this, what's it called? I just said it. It's the imposter thing, the imposter syndrome that I've heard a lot of like trans people talk about. And it's such a wild experience because you want to come out because you're hoping for like some type of community, but then you're like, shit, I haven't spoken this language that people are speaking at all, and I'm 40 years old or 43. And I've heard trans people say they have the same experience about like, I presented as a man for so long, but I'm actually a woman, and here I am in my 30s just trying to traverse how to interact with other women as a woman. And they talk about the imposter syndrome thing. So I think while coming out, if you can, is the most important thing, there's like a thing to it. You're just like, what the fuck am I doing with this now? Like, all right, now everybody knows. God damn it. Maybe I shouldn't have told anybody, but cat's out of the bag. Sorry, this what you were saying made me think about that stuff right there. Male sexuality is a hard thing to navigate because I'm stuck being a dude, right? I couldn't be a chick if I wanted to, and I don't want to be, and I'm definitely not non-binary. So what do I do with that? When I'm already feel like I have a strike against me just for being a guy, because most men are pretty unsafe. I don't know. It's a hard road to navigate, especially after 40 years of like not navigating it, I guess, or avoiding it.
And I mean, you bring up a great point that, we have a good time here, we laugh, we talk about a lot of things, but like this is a tough set of issues to discuss. People are struggling with this, and those of us that are here today talking about it are the ones who have been able to reach a certain point where we're comfortable enough to talk about it publicly. And there's a lot of people that are dealing with so much more who aren't even at that point. And this is hard. And I wonder if, even though we have, in the amount of time allotted for this program, which is rapidly getting away from us, we've gotten through one question, but there's a lot to unpack here. Like, this is a huge topic. We're gonna
have to do a part
episodes like
two
this.
because this is a lot. Like
Yes.
we're barely scratching the surface, and I want to emphasize that because this is not just some issues of gender and sexuality. This is about how we navigate as just people and meeting
Mhm.
people that are different than you, that have a different existence than you do. And how do you treat other people with respect? And how do you, like, if someone says, like, I'm a bi male, and I like I like women and dudes, and you can just be like, okay, that's cool. Do you want to play Assassin's Creed, because that'd be fun. Like, that's all it is. Like, you can you can have both. Like, you don't have to have a long discussion with them, and you just want people to feel comfortable to be around you. And also, like, I'm one of these people that, like, it's okay to be sexually attracted to your friends and just be like totally cool with it. Like, if your friend happens to be gay and they're sexually attracted to you, and they love you as a person, if you say, like, hey man, it's cool, but I just don't feel about the same way, I just want to play Assassin's Creed with you and hang out, that's fine.
Helen, I'm
We
so
have to
glad.
we have to get away from these ideas that just because someone's queer doesn't mean we want to fuck everybody.
Helen,
And
I'm
we
also,
don't want to
I'm
we
so,
don't want to
so glad you brought
sexualize
that up.
people.
yeah, we don't want to
Yeah.
sexualize people. That's the difference that
Yeah.
I'm trying to make. That, like, you can still have a friendship with someone and still be sexually attracted to them, but no boundaries.
That
Everybody's
also, that I'm so glad you brought that up, because that
Yeah.
plays into the religious concept of
Yeah.
thought crime.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's we hear from so many people who come to the Recovering from Religion Network about issues with sex and sexuality, that they feel guilt and shame over thinking things, not doing things, of thinking
Just thinking them.
thoughts. And you can think your thoughts. You're not hurting anybody by maybe yourself, like if you're thinking harmful thoughts or self-harm thoughts, like, but you were not sinful or harmful or wrong for thinking thoughts about, like, attractions or those types of things. So I'm glad you brought that up, just because that's
Yes.
a lot of things a lot of queer people experience, especially with, which I meant to say it, I meant to bring it up in my queer thing, of the concept of compulsory heterosexuality,
Mhm.
of which all the panel's nodding their heads to describe what compulsory heterosexuality is the best way to describe it, at least, and Kara, correct me please if I'm wrong, it's the conditioning that you have in, and this is speaking from like Western American culture, right? But it applies kind of everywhere, of the assumption of heterosexuality upon an individual based from birth, right? Like, we don't assume that anyone's going to be queer. We don't assume that they're going to be transgender. We don't assume they're going to be gay, any of those things. We assume heterosexuality and cisgender normalcy on a person, and that we carry that through our conditioning. That's one of the reasons I came out so late, like in my life, or came out as queer late in my life, is because you just assume for yourself that you are a straight person, that you don't have any queerness. And so that because part of that is the punishment for the thought crimes of, I can't think these gay thoughts, that's bad, therefore the second they come into my mind, I'm just gonna put that I just think women are pretty, I don't actually want to be with them, I just think
Right.
they're
Yeah.
beautiful.
Right. And this is like kind of summed up by the absurdity of, expectant parents having gender reveal parties for their babies. Like, you have no idea what the gender of
It's
your
so
baby is going to
weird.
be. You may
Even
have an idea of what their sex might be assigned when they're born. You have no idea what their gender is going to be.
I have progressive friends that are like totally, like, pro queer. One of them is queer, in a relationship, but like, and they still do gender reveal parties. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like,
We shall have a celebration where we shall tell you the genitals of our offspring. It's like so fucking weird.
It's so weird.
hate
it's
it.
so
It's
messed
so
up.
weird.
It's so messed
Yes.
up. And yeah, and as someone
Yeah.
who has been delivering babies for a year now, it's been so awkward. Like, the one time I really enjoyed being there was delivering a baby for a lesbian couple. Like, that was the best time I ever had. But like, apart from that, they have I'm sorry to cishet people, but your cultural norms are odd. Like,
They're
I
weird.
do not understand. I do not
Oh, they're so
understand,
weird, dude.
like,
We
the
are
fact that they
a
expect
weird
you,
breed.
I'm not weird,
to
you're
ask
weird.
them they expect you to ask them what genital your baby has, because if you don't ask them like what they're having, they get all confused and they think that you don't care. It's like, no, I
Right.
care about your
What
baby
are
being
you
healthy. I
having?
don't care. I do not care.
A baby.
A
Yeah,
dog.
I
I'm
do
having
not
a
care
human
about what is in
baby.
your baby's pants. That is odd. Like that is weird to me. Like, so I've had to change my whole questions, like, to show enthusiasm and show that I care, that don't relate to that. Like, I'll ask them questions about, like, hey, have you gotten everything in your nursery ready? Like, like, are you ready to take your little one home? And like all that stuff is like showing, hey, I'm excited that you're excited, but also like not relying on gender to make you excited about it, because like for a lot of cishet people, like gender is the thing that makes them the most excited to talk about things. I'm like, I don't
It's really interesting.
understand.
No,
I
it
don't
is.
understand.
Yeah. People are like, oh, don't put your queer culture in our face. I'm like, motherfucker, all you do is shove heteronormative culture in our faces. I mean,
And
It's been
meanwhile,
this
they're
way for
literally
like
buying
ever
like
and a day.
onesies for babies that say like ladies man and whatever, which by the way, that sexualization is like done for like little like assigned male at birth babies of like ladies man or whatever, or like the one that makes me just want to cringe out of my skin. It was like, I was only supposed to be a back rub. Like like I
See, what we
Ew,
should be
that's
doing,
upsetting.
Please,
what we
okay.
should be
Funny.
doing is you should be assigning your children your character classes from birth, right? So you have each color relates to their character class. If you're gonna have a cleric, like you gotta know, I gotta know you're having a cleric, or you're
these are
having a
Dungeons and
ranger,
Dragons
if you're having a
references.
warlock.
Yes,
Like
yeah. If
these
you're
are the important questions. How are you raising your child to play D&D? That's what I want to know. Do I want them at my table or not? Like that's it.
like are
That's
they
it.
gonna have a +2 to charisma? Because that's gonna get me shit.
Yeah, like
Love
that's
it.
what
That's all the
matters.
important things.
If I have a party that needs a tank, I'm sorry, but your wizard baby is not going to fill that spot. Like, I'm just putting it out there. I'm just putting it out
like
there.
and
That
like
gives
okay
me
like
great
and
joy.
I do want to okay like I'm gonna play devil's advocate, like okay, like all you cishets, like if you want to have a gender reveal party, that's fine. Like I'm not gonna dumb your young. Like if you this is something you want to do, fine. But I will tell you, it's a little weird because like when I had my babies back in like the early 2000s, I just said I'm having a boy or a girl. I didn't have a party. I just wanted people to buy me stuff. And this is more of like a cis normative sort of perspective back in the early 2000s. Now, if I was going to have a child, I would say I'm having a human baby, just buy me, you know, clothes and diapers and wipes and things that I need. Like, and I think that we want, and this is just because of capitalism and consumerism, that we like things to be in nice little categories. And when now there's some parents that are raising their kids non-binary, which means that they're allowing their children to decide their gender as they get older. Some move to a more cisgender normative, other ones stay in the non-binary space, or some of them just become trans. It's okay. It's fine. And we got to stop treating children like they are little homogenous, like little like things that we're going to assert our cultural norms onto. Like they'll figure it out.
Yeah,
I'm just going to tell you.
that's the danger of these kind of things. Like, on the one hand, the majority of children are going to identify with the sex that they were assigned at birth, and that's just reality. Like the majority of them will keep that identity. However, it's a problem when you teach parents that their expectations of their children are
Mhm.
what that child should be.
Yep.
And that's what ends up having queer kids in a lot of danger, is when they don't meet their parents' expectations and then they get kicked out of the house or they get shunned in some other way. It's because they're not meeting those expectations that society has mandated they meet. And so, like, something that has been big for me is like my family, who are very evangelical Christians. Like, I was the only one assigned female at birth. Like, I cannot meet the societal expectations of being a woman in their eyes. Like, I will not be the child that gets married, that they pay for the wedding and has all the like fun dress shopping and all that. Like, I will not be that for them. Like, I will not be that. And like some of those cultural norms, like while they seem benign, you're locking a person into those norms, and you're locking parents into those norms. Like, you're telling parents that this is going to happen with your child because they were born this way. And that's not the case. And that is going to set people up for failure no matter what side of the coin they're on. And so letting them have flexibility, letting them say, hey, I'm happy with my child because they're my child. Like, that's what's going to get them, you know, to the place where they need to be. And like all the marriage stuff is fucked up anyway. Like, okay, my cat's gonna step on the keyboard, so we'll see how this goes. But like queer marriages, and I'm sure we'll get into a topic about queer relationships. We don't adhere to a lot of these rules of like, there doesn't need to be just one person walking down the aisle. There doesn't need to be one person in a suit. Like all these rules of like, you do this at a wedding, like nobody gives a shit. Like, do your wedding how you want to do your wedding. Have people walk down the aisle who want to walk down the aisle. Like let the couple pick how they want to do their wedding, or let
no
the
wedding.
multiples of people getting
Don't
married.
do
Like,
the
like
wedding
once we get to
industry
a
is a
place where
racket
it's legal.
anyway.
Yeah, like
It's a
once we
racket.
get to a place where it's legal for multiple people to get married to the same people, like let the people having the celebration decide how they want to do this. Like, that's all that matters. Like,
Then you know that
stay
you're invited
out
to
of
my
it.
wedding, right? You know that. Okay, you're getting an invitation. You're being invited to
Yes.
the wedding. It's next year, and yeah, I'm polyamorous, and I'm gonna
I'll go to your
I
wedding.
don't-
I'll go to your
It's
I'm
gonna
gonna
be
be
a good
having
time. We're all gonna hang.
I'm gonna be having a queer polyamorous wedding, and your
Hell
rules,
yeah.
whatever you want. But
It's gonna be awesome. And listen, we
Yes.
have literally
We-
like talked
okay,
about
like
like one topic this
we
whole
might
time, but
we have to do
we
a part
have
two,
to go.
everybody.
No, we're going to the next question. We are going to the next question, and then we're gonna wrap up. The next question you will answer with 1 point each.
Okay.
Because I want us to get to it.
Sorry.
No,
We
this
will.
is
Okay, we
awesome.
will have
We
a
have
part
talked
two.
so much, and yeah,
we will
we'll
plan
do
a part
this again.
two.
We'll do this again,
Yeah.
but like I want us to get to
Okay,
the next
let's
question,
stay on
which we
track.
promised.
Track.
We promised people we would talk about, like, what does it mean to be a good ally? How can you be a better ally? And so, like, an example that I will give people is I recommend wearing something like a pin. I have this pin that I like to wear that says, "You are safe with me." I don't know if you can really see it on the screen very
I
well.
have one of those too.
Yeah, this is a great example of something you can do to be a good ally. Okay, go. Ben, you first.
Okay, this is complicated. So there's a lot of people that try to be allies that are not doing a good job. And it's not because I don't want to. But there's a problem when people who believe that they're allies get into conversations and then say the wrong things at the wrong times with people. So there's a lot of terminology that, like, some of which we've covered tonight, a lot of which has not been covered. There's a lot of nuance especially in the online debate spaces. And being a good ally, number one, like, if you don't know the right things to say, you can always lean back on human rights and respect for everybody. Those will always get you places. If you don't know any of the rest of it, you can jump in and say, hey, I think these people should have rights because they are humans, and I will speak on their behalf. Like, that's good allyship. We love that. However, it gets problematic when I've seen, especially this is more so for people on the internet who make videos and shit, and who get into discussions on Twitter and all the above. There's some nuance and there's some dog whistles that get thrown around, especially with regard to trans issues and gender and bathrooms and all of that jazz. If you don't understand the nuances, like if you do not know why certain things are being argued, and this is very hard to say to a lot of people because, like, on the one hand, I want people to get involved, but on the other hand, if you don't know what you're talking about, do not step into those spaces, because it can be more harmful. If you do not understand the bathroom debate and you jump into a bathroom debate about trans people, you could actually make it worse because there are a lot of dog whistles that people will use that sound not too bad, but they will cause more people to get involved and more aggression, more problematic debate. And so even if, like, let's say you're on the internet and some trans person is going toe to toe with like an onslaught of transphobia, if you do not know what you are talking about to the most like minute details, do not enter. Let that person take it. Let the other trans people enter in as well. Let them handle it. I mean, at the end of the day, it is our community that should be leading the charge. And no, we should not be the only ones. Like, the role of allies are to support the minority community that are primarily involved in the fight, but do not take that. Do not try to take the glory from us. This is our fight. Do not try to take the whole fight from us. Try to lift each other up in that. Be a support system for those people. But especially if you do not understand the content, do not step in, even if you want to, because it can. And I have seen, and I only say this because I've seen it. I've seen it from content creators in our atheist community. I have seen people say things that we've had to talk to them and say, hey, this was counterproductive. You did not say things that included trans people. And so as much as you want to weigh in, just, it's okay to not. It's okay to not.
Yes, it's okay
So,
to not weigh in.
It's
I
okay
love
to
it.
not. And I'll pass it from there.
Thank you. Okay, Jason, do you want to go next? How can people be good allies? Give us one or two things.
Honestly, I mean, I say this to be kind of tongue in cheek, but just, I think you should just remember that everybody takes a shit. And I say that because, we have such a polarized and, queer people, trans people, gay people, this person and agenda, this. It's like, yeah, after all that shit's done, everybody's got to go home and digest their food and take a shit and wipe their ass, right? So I say that to say is that I just want to be treated like a normal motherfucker, right? I just want to be, this is Jason. He goes to work. He does a good job. He's a good dad. Those are qualities about me. My preferences, and I don't really want to be defined by like if I like chocolate, right? Or if I like dick. I mean, I don't really think either one of those things really. I mean, they matter like a lot. Yeah, they really do, but also at the same time, they're boring and mundane and just as boring as any other person who likes dick. So or chocolate, or whatever. Playing sports. So I think if I think an ally could just treat people like a normal motherfucker. Just treat people like they're normal, because every human experience is a normal human experience. That to me, that's such a big deal. It's like, this is a normal thing that people experience. People want to have sex with other people. People identify as ways. What ways? I don't know. Whatever ways they do. But people identify, people express, people want to fuck. And there's really nothing exciting about any of that stuff. The only reason anybody's made it exciting is because somebody made up some fucked up rules and convinced a bunch of people and foreclosed their identities. So I don't know. To me, from a queer dude to people and who are not queer and who want to support people, just treat me like any other person. I would appreciate that. Don't be blind to it, but color blindness, queer blindness, whatever. But I take shits just like you do. So that's all I really have to say about that.
No, I love it. That's a great takeaway point. Okay, Helen, not Helen, sorry, Glenda. Also, we'll get to Helen next, but Glenda, finish us off
I'll be
with
fast.
one thing. Do it.
I'll be fast.
Okay.
You vote with every dollar you spend. That's important. Like Chick-fil-A, if you want to be a progressive ally for queer people, don't go to Chick-fil-A. If you don't know that they support legislation against LGBT people, just consider it. Vote with every dollar you spend. That being said, also vote. You may not think that your vote matters in the presidential election, and you could be in an area where your vote really doesn't matter in the presidential election. But I'll tell you, it matters in your local elections, and it'll be your mayors and your senators and your little state legislators who are deciding whether or not your little local public high school can have trans people in the bathroom, because that's state law versus federal law. Okay. There's an important difference between the two. Your local elections are probably more important than your federal elections. You vote with every dollar you spend. You need to be voting as well. If you are able, safely, if you're able, be visible. Not everybody's able to be visible. If you are able to be visible as an atheist, be visible as a queer person, be visible as a feminist, all of those things. And lastly, which is the hardest lesson to learn, is to pick your battles. You are not responsible for making the world a better place overnight. You aren't. And it's not going to become a better place overnight. Discerning which argument to take place in. You hear someone at a bar making some transphobic comments, saying like, hey, I think you're fucking shitty for saying that, or whatever you want to say. Learning to navigate, when can I do the most good? When can I increase joy the most and decrease suffering the most, can be a very difficult thing to learn. And you are not responsible for making the world this Star Trek luxury gay space communism overnight. Okay. You are not responsible. So my advice to be a good ally is to follow some queer content creators, and you can just sit back and just start consuming. Okay. You can passively read, you can passively watch videos. I'm not asking you to genuinely like get on the street with a picket sign tomorrow. Okay. You can start slow. There's no pressure. It's a long journey. Deconstructing concepts that religion and the patriarchy and society has ingrained in us since birth is a very difficult journey. So just be kind on yourself and be kind on others, and take your time and join the RfR online community, and then look at all of our resources, because we have so many, and that's a great place to start. So that is my advice on how to be. Also, last thing, please don't go around like, I'm an ally, I'm an ally, I'm an ally. Please don't. Like, just don't. Just show that by action and not by words. I promise the queer the alphabet mafia over here, which we are, the alphabet mafia over here, we're going to see that by your actions and not by your words. You don't have to convey to us that you're an ally. We're going to see that based on your actions. So that's what I have.
Awesome. Thank you. And there is so much more to discuss on this topic. And I'm telling y'all right now, I'm making a command decision. We're going to go just a few minutes over time tonight. We are going to wrap up and go to the hangout soon, but we promised that we would do Q&A. And so I want us to get at least to a couple of questions. Before we do, Helen, you wanted to share the poll results real quickly. So go ahead with that.
Okay. Hold on. It would help if I end poll and then share results. Yeah, let's do that. Okay.
Oh my God, look at the yes, we're at 53%. We won gayness, everybody.
We won the gayness. So do you identify as a member of the queer community? 53% of you said yes. 32% of you said no, you're not as colorful as us. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. You're still welcome here.
You're so welcome. I'm just being silly. You are not sure. That is at 9%, and 21% of you says you're an ally, and we thank you for that. If you have left religion, were queer issues part or all of the reason for your deconversion? 6% said yes completely. 36% said yes in part. 21% say maybe a little bit. 4% not sure. 36% said no, and nobody has left religion. I have not left my religion, so good. I'm glad that you're here. How uncomfortable do you feel discussing queer issues? 48%. I celebrate cry year round. Yay! 38%. I'll talk about it if necessary. Yay! I'm a private person. 6%. Yay! I'm curious or only a little familiar with the subject. 4%. Yay! I am totally lost. That's why you're here. All right, and 0% never thought about it before. Number 4, were you taught queerness or being gay or gender nonconforming was wrong? 82% of us people said, yes, I am sorry. 12% said no. Okay. Good on your whatever religious institution you belong to. I hope they were progressive and cool. 6% said not sure. Okay, and who is your favorite queer Star Trek character? Riker at 8%, Dr. Culber at 2%, Garrick at 2%. Nobody mentioned Dax, shame on you. Data, 28%, everybody showing their age. Phylox, 0%. Everyone on Strange New Worlds, which is what I would pick, at 4%. Someone else, if you put it in the chat, I missed it. And I don't want Star Trek. Stop asking me these questions at 34%. Too bad, too sad. You're here. And they will be asked.
Yeah, you know what?
This is hard.
This is a good point to interject. If you don't want us to ask Star Trek questions, you should join the volunteer team.
You're right.
And possibly get in on this inner circle when we
That's right.
When we're deciding the poll questions. And if you don't want to hear about Star Trek, you need to become a volunteer so you can input that you don't want to hear about Star Trek.
Yeah,
that's right.
me,
Otherwise your points are mute.
Appreciate that.
Okay, let's move to
Q&A. Go to questions. Yeah, we're going to do at least a couple of questions. We're going to run a few minutes over.
You ask question first because I have to use the restroom. I'll be right back.
Okay, okay, go for it. Yes, and I have to give a shout out to all of my team here tonight. Lindsay has been Wine Fairy, and my brother took my dog out for a bio break a minute ago. So like it is a team effort at the House of Griffin at the moment. So thanks everybody for hanging on with us. So this has been a great discussion. Thank you so much everyone for contributing, and we're going to put everyone's like links, and we've got resources to share as well. But let's go to some questions. I want to ask this question, and by the way, we're not going to get to all of them, so stick around for the hangout if you want to ask further questions. We'll get through a few, but there's a whole lot of questions. Stay for the hangout. That's what you get for coming in person. You get to ask questions in the hangout. Okay. So I want to ask this one. This is a question to all of the panelists. So everybody will answer. How do you feel? Well, okay, I should say everyone has the opportunity to answer. How do you feel about your life in terms of life satisfaction, happiness, mental freedom, etc., of living publicly as your true self, societal challenges notwithstanding, versus before you came out or transitioned?
I'll start. So, I'll just go ahead and start.
Go for it.
And I'm sorry if I get emotional beforehand, just because and I mean this, and I know it sounds like this hyperbole, but I truly mean it. And this is my privilege living in the area that I'm living in, living the life that I do live. I want to make that very clear. I'm not expressing this in my hometown. I live in a major metropolitan Western United States city. Every day I think I can't put more love and more satisfaction in my life and what I'm doing. And every day I find a way to do it. My queer polycule, polycule is the term for all of my partners and their partners and all of our friends. I think I've reached the maximum for how supported I feel and how loved I feel and validated I feel. And then something else happens, and yet I managed to cram more into my heart and into my spirit, as it were. I am so happy living openly and authentically, and it is what gives me joy and comfort and peace and happiness. And it's also what fills my cup, as it were, to be able to extend that to others, to be able to give others joy and peace and happiness, because you can't pour from an empty cup. And being a volunteer, being able to like be satisfied in your own life to give joy to others is important. I not just, again, to speak in hyperbole, but I'd kind of rather not be existing than not be out and be. That is just how I feel about it now. I would not live any other way.
That's great. I love that. That is an excellent answer. Ben or Jason, who wants to go next?
Ben, go ahead.
Can you repeat the question? I have ADHD.
No, you're all good. Yes.
Okay.
No worries. So the question was, how do you feel about your life in terms of life satisfaction, happiness, mental freedom, etc.?
Okay.
Now that you've come out versus before.
Yeah, I was like, I will try to separate this from the am I happier since being in residency or not? Because that's a whole separate question. Um, I came out in med school. Well, okay, no, I came out as queer just prior to med school, came out as trans in med school. So some of my take is a little bit biased based on those factors. But as far as quality of life, would I ever go back to being someone that thinks I'm a cis woman, even though I'm not? Absolutely fucking not. No. Would I ever go back to thinking that I'm a heterosexual cis woman? Absolutely fucking not. I would not do it ever. So everything that I've experienced at this point, I am infinitely happier than pretending I'm not what I am. So that's all I got to say about that.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear it. Okay, Jason, go.
Yeah, I don't really have anything astronomical to add other than I agree with them both. You know, what Glenda and Ben said. This is the best fucking version of me ever. My partner can agree to it. My kid can agree to it. My friends close to me. This is, you know, like I'm never a happy person. You know, it's just kind of my, you know, personality. So I am much less miserable than I've ever been, if that's the best way to put it, you know? So for anybody who's kind of a pessimist and whatever, they understand what I'm getting at. You know, this is definitely the least miserable I've ever been. This is definitely the most self-confident I've ever been. And it's good because you know, I'm not a pacifist. I'm kind of an aggressive person. So, and you know, this just gives me something else to like yell at shitty people about, right? I'm like, oh, something else. Yeah, you don't like my fucking queer shirt and my upside down cross. Cool, that sucks. I'm your boss. You're just gonna have to deal with it. You know, so it's so I just like harass more people about things like this. It's funny because I work in like such a super uber conservative environment. And I'm just like, what's up, y'all? Just wearing rainbow shirts and fucking upside down crosses. And they can't do anything about it. They have to say yes, sir to me. So I like it because it's fun and it's just more of another way for me to say fuck you to people. So yeah, I definitely like being out. I think my friends and family like me a lot more. And for those who don't, I mean, they just go fuck themselves. So I just think that works out best. So yeah, I agree with the other two wonderful people on the panel.
I love that perspective. This is why we have you on, Jason.
Thank you. I'll be here all night.
Thank you for being here. Okay, Helen, do you want to ask one more question to our panel?
I will ask one more question. Okay. Okay, so let's give this is an educational question. What is gender fluid?
This is hard because people, I don't think we have a gender fluid representation here. So I ideally would have liked to have somebody who was this label to
My
describe
kid.
it.
My kid is gender fluid.
Yeah, Jason,
just
go
so
for
you
it.
know.
Describe what your kid would say.
Okay, so the way Hunter would describe their gender fluidity is that it's kind of the maybe it's how you would think of it. The way they describe it. I mean, this is again from a 12-year-old who's just now developing executive function. The way Hunter describes it is I wake up today, I feel much more mask presenting. You know, I would like to kind of carry myself in the world. They don't really care because I refer to Hunter a lot of times as she or they, but I'm like, hey, dude, yeah, also everybody's dude for me, but I said I referred to them as he the other day, and they really like that. That's what is there? There's a performer called Big Frida, and they kind of go by that whole thing, like you call me whatever you want. I have every bit of it inside of me. I love every bit of it. This is me. Maybe one day I'm wearing some pants, this, but it's still kind of a fluidity. So it's more about expression and internal experience from the way my kiddo has explained it to me. But it's really interesting because they don't really have to say anything that day. I can tell kind of the way they're carrying themselves, the clothing they're wearing, their expression. Maybe they're a little more this, a little more mask, a little more non, a little more femme. But there's definitely like they're always quote themselves, but there's this just more maybe how they want to express themselves and navigate throughout the world that's also aligning with their internal experience that day, that hour, that moment. You know, so there's a fluid, again, it's fluid. So I think the term kind of describes itself. Again, that's we're learning this all together, and this is been in the past year. So I'm still trying to learn, and my partner, and we're all just trying to work together with it. Cause like Ben said, there isn't like this is gender fluid. And I think it's kind of funny because it is fluid, so it's not concrete. So I don't know. That's the take I have to give on it. At least what we're working with family therapy. My kiddo's going to a therapist. My partner has a private practice, and I have a degree in psychology. So we're trying to do our best to take it from all the most educated, academically sound angles, right? So I don't know. I'll stay tuned. That's about the best I've got right there.
As someone that is academically educated, married to someone that's academically educated, queer and has a queer child, there is no rules. You just do the best you can, and you're just like, did my kid not turn out an asshole and they're good to other people? Great, I did my job. Yay!
No, Hunter's a total asshole, and that's totally cool.
I know.
I'm good with being an
Well,
asshole.
no, I love your kid. Hunter is
that's it.
really cool.
Yeah.
I've met Hunter, and Hunter is a sweet potato, and I love that kid, and I would totally hang out with Hunter.
Oh yeah, Hunter's cool.
Because they are a Spitfire, and they are a great kid. And
thank
so
you.
I'm just going to advocate for everybody should be cool with Hunter.
Yeah, only Hunter. We advocate for Hunter on this.
Yeah,
We advocate for Hunter. Also, Helen's offspring is pretty cool too, as is Gail's.
No.
We don't
Okay.
talk about them.
Yes. And on that note, we have so many more questions. We want to get to them. We're going to have to do it in the Hangout. So if we didn't ask your question, stick around. We're going to the Hangout. You can ask your question directly, or we can ask it for you. Either way is fine. We have got to wrap up, though. And I want to thank everybody on our panel and everybody in our audience and all of our volunteers for making this happen. This was an amazing panel. We have clearly figured out that we're going to have to do it again because we didn't even get through half of the stuff we wanted to discuss, and that is awesome. Also, panelists, if you want people to know where they can find you, drop your links in the chat and let people know where they can find you. We also have some resources. If you have any resources you want to share with people, drop them in the chat. We'll put those in the show notes as well. Let's go ahead and wrap up so we can go to the Hangout. Don't forget to join us next week, same time, same channel. We're having Richard Gilliver talking about the implausibility of the resurrection. And Helen, where can people find us on the social medias?
Okay, y'all. Yeah, you're all social media savvy. Okay, so what you're gonna do? You're gonna go to Facebook and put in "Recovering from Religion" for our main Facebook page. If you want to find out more information about our support groups, go to your Facebook and put RfR Support Group Project, and you'll find more about our support groups. If you are still on the arts that's formerly known as Twitter, X, and you want to find more about recovering from our religion, go to twitter.com/rfrorg. We are also on Instagram at instagram.com/rfrorg. We are on TikTok at Recovering from Religion. All of our previous RfRx recordings, we are at 198 as of last week. I don't know, are we at 199?
Yes, we're at 199.
So we're at 199. Almost at the 2, can be found on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/recovering from religion. And there are former talks of Jason and Glenda and Ben on those on our YouTube page. So you should go check those out and get more RFR into your ear holes, everybody. So do that. Okay. Hey, Cara, do you want to talk about the benefits of volunteering? Because I know that Glenda touched on it. We could make Glenda do it again.
Yes, the main benefit we learned this evening to volunteering is if you get on the online programming team, you can decide whether or not we keep asking poll questions about Star Trek. Bear in mind, I am going to play gatekeeper in that role, and we may keep having questions about Star Trek, but you know what?
I'm not sorry.
To debate. Yes. So come volunteer with us, and you can have joy in your life as well. And also, some people, find that healing comes from helping others. And you can do that too. All of our services are supported by volunteers. We always need more volunteers volunteers, please come volunteer with us. And if you would like to do that, you can go to our website, recoveringfromreligion.org/volunteer, and fill out an application. And you can do all sorts of things like answering the helpline, moderating the online community, doing web development, helping us make poll questions, finding resources, whatever it is. If you want to help out, we can find a spot for you. So
Being a Star Trek hater, which we would hold space for you if you
we
would.
will hold space for you.
If you like Doctor Who, we can
Who?
merge.
It's
We can
okay.
be part of the
You can
Doctor
still
Who
join
Star
us.
Trek RfR polycule.
What about
We'll be
those of us who like
okay.
Slayer? I don't know anything about what you're talking
Yes.
about, but I know about Slayer. So I mean, we can hopefully that's a good middle ground.
I
That
also know
sounds
about
cool.
Slayer and Star Trek and Doctor Who. I am a
Yes.
mixture of different things and D&D.
Yes, you will fit in here. We will find a way. You will fit in. Don't worry. Okay, so on that note, let's go ahead and wrap up. Dr. Ray, are you ready to bring us on home?
I am so ready. I have had to bite my tongue this whole evening because I want to jump in and say something, but I get the last word, I guess you could say. Hey, thanks to the whole panel, but also to the audience, because the questions and the dialogue and interaction just been really, really cool to see. This is a discussion that I love having, and 20 years ago we couldn't have had this discussion, or it would have been really difficult. Of course, technology has something to do with it, but I'm just glad we're having this. So I want to ask a question. I want you to think about this. How are you a different person than when you were 12 years old? And how are you a different person than when you are 21 years old? And if you're older, how are you a different person when you're 35 years old? If you contrast your age today and who you are and what you are with those previous ages, most people, there may be a few people that don't quite get that, but most people would say, I'm a very different person than what I was at 12, or I'm very different than what I was at 21. And so what it just tells us is that people learn, people evolve, people change. In other words, you are fluid. Is it any surprise that you might be fluid in your different identities and sexualities? It seems pretty obvious, I think, when you think about it in terms of how fluid you are in other ways. Why can't you be just as fluid or have the potential to change in your sexual identity, or or other kinds of identities? Because we carry a lot of identities around inside of our heads. So I want to contrast that with something else, another metaphor I think I like, and that is our brains have been trained to be binary in this culture, sexually binary. You're either male, you're a female. And we're starting to challenge that. We're starting to say, no, wait a minute. And I think this is a good way to understand it. For better part of 100 years, we had cameras that took pretty good pictures, but they're all black and white and maybe shades of gray. But now we have cameras that can take full color, full visual spectrum color pictures, and we can see so much more. And that's what we've been doing tonight. We have been trying to help retrain our brains from that old black and white camera that we were given. I had a black and white Brownie when I was 10 years old. That's all I could take was black and white pictures. But I have a full color camera now on my iPhone, and I can take full color pictures. And I can see other people in full color instead of seeing other people simply as black and white. And I think that's what we're struggling with. And that's what our brains are struggling with. This is a brain repatterning program. And I'm 73 years old. I fucking struggle with this. I am not going to bullshit you. I have to remind myself, what pronouns to use. But I'm learning. I'm an old dog and I can still learn a trick or two. But it's going to be a long struggle, I think, for our culture. I think if we start showing some compassion for people, trying to educate them, maybe using this kind of a metaphor. Christianity is a very black and white kind of religion. Islam's a very black and white kind of religion. So is Islam and Mormonism and Scientology. I mean, all these are very black and white. But we have the capability of seeing people in full color. And I guess that's how I'd like to wind this up tonight. Thanks, everybody.